I don't wanna be the boy that runs in the back. I don't wanna be the kid that falls in the dark. All I really want to be is the guy that gets that girl.
Welcome to the AJ Steele Show. We discuss politics, sex, money, and everything in between. And now, here's your host, an immigrant, a self-made millionaire, an American, AJ Steele.
Everything I say and do, I'm just not good enough. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Yes, ex-President Obama said that this Muslim call to prayer is one of the prettiest sounds he's ever heard. That may be the case for him. It might be okay for Barack Hussein Obama. But for the rest of the world, this sound is interpreted as a call to war, terror, and subjugation to Islam. It seems like Europe, Western Europe at least, and some Americans are ready to give up their right to a free and a modern way of life. But India, the Chinese, Israelis, Russians, Japanese, Hungarians, Poles, Greeks, Egyptians, and many others are not yet willing to fall under the dark, violent shadow of radical Islam, and they are battling it in order to survive and remain independent of that aggressive, expansionist, retrograde 7th century ideology. Welcome to a new episode of the AJ Steele Show. We're all astounded at the great success of our program. Not only are we getting thousands and thousands of podcast downloads, and our website just passed 100,000 visits, but also my email is full of new fans asking questions and leaving comments. Some good, some not so good. But let's keep this thing going and see how high up the mountain we can climb. I've always believed that the sky's the limit in all my ventures, and I don't plan to stop now. So to all my regular and new listeners, let's keep the ball rolling. Please keep subscribing to our show and spreading the word. Together, you and I can make a difference in this world. But before we reach the moon, we have a great show to do here today. And what I'm going to talk about is a topic that is very controversial, very divisive, and in some cases very explosive. We're going to discuss Islam and the West. Are we even compatible? Can people from countries that have extremely low IQ averages, violent, corrupt societies, a people who faithfully practice an exact version of a 7th century desert religion of subjugation, actually live here with us? Is there any intersection where we can coexist? So that's the first part of our show. But the last part of the show, I will talk about my solutions to the many dangers affecting our way of life, and even more important, our continued survival in the face of radical Islam and its many followers. This is not a show to be taken lightly. And just to make clear, it is not directed at any patriotic American Muslims or any peace-loving Muslims around the world. But we are going to discuss, without any political correctness, a large swath of Islam and the way that it is practiced in the world today. Okay, these are some big topics today. So let's take a little break, and we will be right back with our discussion on Islam and the West. This is AJ Steele.
All I really want to be is the guy that gets that girl.
The AJ Steele Show. Think of your loudmouth best friend, hated by all the wives, because he tells it just like it is.
Finally see your love belongs to me.
Welcome back to the AJ Steele Show. So many of you listeners have written to me about the threat of Islam. Rami L. in Jersey, Mandy J. in Italy, Mr. Kumar in Texas, Kathy R. in Long Island, Gary L. in Canada, and Laura J. in California. These are only some of the many letters I've received. And you're all concerned about Islam in America. So let's talk about Islam. Let's talk about the history of Islam a little bit so we get a perspective. So what is Islam? Islam is the third of the great Abrahamic monotheistic religions to come out of the Middle East. The first one, of course, is Judaism, which dates back to about 4,000 years ago, and which designated Jerusalem as the holy place where God's Spirit resides, and where the first Jewish temple was built by King Solomon nearly 3,000 years ago. At that point, Jerusalem was made Israel's eternal capital. Then came Christianity, led by a Jewish man named Jesus, who is considered by many in the world to be the Son of God. This religion came about 2,000 years ago. The third and newest major religion to spring up in that part of the world was Islam, led by the Prophet Muhammad, who lived and died in the year 632 after Christ, AC. This was approximately 1,400 years ago. All three religions share numerous beliefs and traditions, and they all believe in the same God, but they also diverge. Each one of them has what they believe to be the correct one and only way to follow God's will. I will discuss Judaism and Christianity in detail on future episodes, but today I'm going to concentrate on the religion and the people who seem to be involved in the most conflicts in the world. Conflicts with Christians, conflicts with Jews, conflicts with Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Russians, Chinese, Indians, gays, straights, agnostics, atheists, Americans, Europeans, French, English, and even among themselves. They're even in constant conflict with other members of Islam. They don't even like each other. Now, before all the bleeding hearts jump on me and try to get me banned from all media, let me clarify. Not all Muslims are bad. Not all Muslims are terrorists. Not all Muslims are filled with hate and rage. But guess what? In my opinion, many of them are. A small percentage of Muslims are terrorists, but a large percentage of Muslims support their despicable behavior, and many of them do not care for the West or for any kind of reapproachment or peace with anyone who does not happen to be a Muslim. To put it simply, there are about 1.5 billion Muslims in the world today. If only 1% of them are terrorists, that means that there are 15 million dangerous terrorists in the world. If only 10% of them support terror and Sharia law, that means that 150 million of them support that kind of behavior, that kind of 7th century evil. In my opinion, that number is much higher, closer to 70%, which would mean that there are 1 billion Muslims who hate all non-Muslims and the West, and they advocate some kind of violent action to submit all of us to the tenets of Islam. But let's get back to a simple explanation of what the religion is. We'll start with some simple terms that most of us hear all the time, but maybe only a few of us know what they truly mean. The Arabic word Islam means submission, submission to Allah, and submission of all others to Islam. You hear of the word jihad a lot. Jihad is a holy war which each Muslim is supposed to partake in against infidels. Infidels is what the Muslims consider to be non-believers, which includes Jews, Christians, Buddhists, etc. So all of us, basically. They are supposed to take a jihad against all the non-Muslims who live on earth. Now, what is Sharia? Sharia, also known as Sharia law, is a set of archaic and violent 7th century Mohammedan laws of conduct that control every aspect of life for a Muslim, and they include many severe punishments for non-believers like us. Punishments that include being a second-class citizen and all the way up to death. There's no separation of church and state here. Sharia is the supreme and only law and seeks for Islam to have total control of every aspect of a Muslim's life. This law, they believe, supersedes any of our Western laws. So basically, the Islamic world views the world as two distinct regions. One is called Dar al-Islam, which means the House of Islam, which refers to countries under the rule of submission or paradise, versus Dar al-Harb, which means house of war, of hell and sin. And this includes every country that does not follow Islam, including the United States of America. According to Islam, the House of Harb needs to be defeated by jihad and subjugated to Islam. They are advocating for a constant state of holy war until we all become Muslims, just like them. Or I guess we all just die. Now listen, you can look at the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament and find things that seem to be archaic and cruel as well. But there's one big difference between those two religions and Islam. And the difference is this: they have had a reformation. And the words of the Bible are not always taken literally, nor are they considered the law of the land. We have our own system of laws here in America. They're based on Judeo-Christian values, but we don't just follow biblical laws. We have real laws that are applied to Americans of all stripes. Christian, Jewish, Muslim, agnostic, they work for everyone. They're not just for one set of people. Because of this Reformation, Jewish people and Christians, they don't stone adulterers or throw gays off roofs. They have adapted to modern life, and they use the scripture as a guide, not as a literal law or a weapon. Now, Islam never had a reformation. A true Muslim believer must follow all of the Quran as law, without exception. So when people say, oh, look at this devout Muslim, he's so good because he follows his religion, they're actually making a huge mistake. Following Islam literally, like many Muslims do, justifies their violence towards infidels and the West and women and gays and all non-Muslims. In other words, not all religions are created or interpreted equally. Now, I could talk for hours about history and about world religions because no other host knows more about any of these things than I do. But I really just want to talk today about the situation, about Islam and its followers who are immigrating here legally and illegally. Do most of these people want to assimilate? Can they actually become contributing, peaceful members of our modern world, or will they always be the other? The aggressive, the hateful, the uncompromising? Are they always going to be the ones claiming to be victims, while in reality they're the ones victimizing us? Is Islam and its adherents compatible with our way of life? These questions might be the defining questions of our time. I hope you stick around with the AJ Steele Show, because when I come back to this important discussion, I'm going to share some answers, some opinions, and some solutions to this old and new problem plaguing the modern world. This is AJ Steele. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the AJ Steele Show, where no topic is off limits, no discussion too harsh, no truth more true. The AJ Steele Show. We tell it like it is.
All I really want to be is a guy that gets the girl. All I really want to be.
Welcome back to the AJ Steele Show. We're talking about Islam, and the $64,000 question today is whether Islam and Muslims are compatible with our way of life. My answer is a simple and resounding no. Islam from its inception was a violent conquering force. In the early days, it expanded to cover the whole Arabian Peninsula, all the way to Africa, parts of Asia, and Europe. The Crusades started by the church at the year 1100 and hated by the Muslims until this very day were a direct response to the ever-expanding Muslim empire and its conquering of the Holy Land in Jerusalem. They lasted less than 300 years, those crusades, and they ended in absolute defeat for the Christian world. And it wasn't until 1948 when the modern state of Israel was established by Jewish people, the original inhabitants of the country, that Islam was finally defeated in the Holy Land. But today, 1.5 billion Muslims, aided by insane suicidal liberals in the West, have become a conquering force once again. They can't actually beat us with large armies and superior culture, because frankly, they're part of a poor, uneducated, low IQ, low achievement society. But in my opinion, they can beat us by just wearing us down with constant terror attacks, constant campaigns of fear combined with victimhood and a superior religious unity. Yes, they're a lot more united than all the Christians and all the Jews of the world. And it can also beat us by pure demographic numbers. Simply put, they have more kids, they are more united by their religion than any other group on earth. But think about it. What good has Islam brought to us? short of some falafel and belly dancing. Do Muslims in general contribute positively to our culture? Are they patriotic Americans? Are most of them self-sufficient or on government assistance? Are most of them smart and educated? How about cleanliness? Are the neighborhoods clean? Are they a peaceful bunch? I implore you to think long and hard and very rationally without racism or preconceived notions. What good has Islam done to any country to which it has moved into? Islam is not a religion like many others. It is a combination of religion and political system. In other words, Islam controls every aspect of a Muslim's life, including money, marriage, code of laws, and behaviors. So what do most of these immigrants bring to the West? What do they bring? They bring extremely high rates of crime, drug use, and violence. There's a lot of that amongst the Islamic population. Many of these people are members of an aggressive society where disputes are settled with physical violence, attacks, honor killings. Do you know about the honor killing system where fathers are supposed to murder their own daughters if they become too Western or if they have sex before marriage? I'm not making this up. They actually have honor killings in Europe, in Canada, and even here in the United States. Can you believe that? Fathers and brothers are supposed to kill their daughters for becoming too westernized. Now, that's not the only problem. Many of these immigrants are extremely low IQ individuals with limited ability to improve their place in life. They have really bad education to begin with. Most of them have no more than primary school education. Many of them are horrible as far as jobs are concerned. They have no job prospects. They expect to be supported by the government of the countries that they hate so much, and they live off the largesse of the same infidel taxpayers that they want to destroy. More than 90% of recent refugees from Muslim Middle Eastern countries are on food stamps, and nearly 70% of them receive cash assistance according to government data. Many of them are basically welfare cases. Them, their wives, their kids, their grandkids. We don't need that. We have enough poor people in America. We don't need any more of those kind of people. But probably the most dangerous aspect of mass Islamic migration to the West is the fact that they have extremely low assimilation rates. And they don't actually have a desire to assimilate. They have a pre-programmed hatred of infidels in the West. They have an intolerance of non-Muslim behavior. And they have a desire to subjugate non-Muslims to Muslim laws. Many of them believe that Sharia law is more important than civil law, and they actually enforce it in heavily populated Muslim neighborhoods. In Europe, they do that, and they do it here in the USA too. There are actual neighborhoods right here in America where they have what is called modesty patrols, which is their own Sharia police force, which is completely independent of our country's police force. These so-called Sharia police force, these modesty patrols, drive around, walk around and make sure that Muslims remain modest, that they don't eat pork, that they don't dress too wild. Right here in America and over there in Europe. I'm just getting started here. Did I talk about that rampant anti-Semitism? From early age, they teach their kids, and they actually believe that Jews are the sons of apes and pigs. They hate Israel, they hate the West, they hate Christianity, they hate Jews, they hate Buddhists, they hate everyone. Their family life is very archaic. They live with multiple children, and in many cases, as a matter of fact, it's quite rampant, there is physical and mental abuse in their families. It's totally acceptable for a father to beat his sons and daughters, and the wife, because they have no respect for women. They believe in child marriages. They believe in genital mutilations. They have a culture of rape and misogyny, which views women and children as property. It's a culture that allows polygamy and even worse, interfamily marriages, which is a part of the reason why there are so many low IQ individuals in the Islamic culture. This is a culture that in some cases allows pedophilia with young boys. Yet it's the same culture that also promotes the hatred and the killings of homosexuals. They hate gays, and yet it's very common in some Islamic countries like Afghanistan for men to sleep with young boys. It's a very common occurrence. I realize it's in fashion to attack Catholic priests for pedophilia, but where are all these people that hate the Catholic Church so much? Where are they? How come they don't speak out against a culture in Islam, in some Muslim countries for sure, where pedophilia with young boys is accepted? It's not even hidden. It's out in the open. I promise to dedicate another full show to pedophilia in the religious worlds of today. But let's get back to Islam and Muslims. Their allegiance is to Islam and not to their host country. And that's where the whole thing begins and ends. History shows that whenever Muslims become a majority in any neighborhood, city, or region, they become very aggressive in asserting their power and enforcing their beliefs. Like when they insist that women dress modestly, no pork will be served, no stores that can sell pork are allowed to be in their vicinity, and that all their holidays are observed. I can't really think of any group of people with such nerve. They escape their crap hole country, move into a great host country, and then they dare to try to tell the citizens of the country that let them in how to behave in their own nation. In other words, they escape their personal hellish existence in their countries, and then they come here and try to force us to live through that hell again. We don't want to live through their hell. Period. End of story. As you can tell, I have lots of opinions, but I also have many rational solutions. And when I get back, I'm going to discuss all of them. I hope you're enjoying and I hope you're learning something from this show. This show is extremely important in my opinion, and more Americans need their eyes opened up to Islam and Muslim behavior. It is time for all of us to wake up. Islam, the way it is practiced today, is not compatible with our way of life. Not all Muslims are bad, and some of them are very decent, contributing members of our society, and those kind of people we want here. But the large majority of Muslims that come here to America, these so-called refugees, are a burden and a detriment to our way of life. This is the AJ Steele Show. I promise to be right back with some solutions and opinions on how to deal with this Islamic invasion of the Western world. I'd like to remind you again to subscribe to our show and spread the word. We'll be right back.
AJ Steele. Not right, not left, just right.
Don't float like Ollie, don't sing like Howard, and don't cry like a pussy.
Welcome back. I'm AJ Steele. I could have done 10 consecutive shows talking about Islam and the West, but alas, I have limited time at our show. I know that all the bleeding heart liberals who hate America and yet love Islam so much will call me names, attack me as a racist, and try to ruin my good reputation. And why? Because I told the truth. A listener named Shai tweeted to me the following: "Not being allowed to criticize Islam is how they get their foot in the door. Once you aren't allowed to speak the truth, once you aren't allowed to say it like it so very clearly is, then they have already won. It's how they get away with what they do." You know what, Shai? I couldn't have said it better myself. And to all of you who still persist on extolling the virtues of Muslim immigration, take a look at Paris. Take a look at all those no-go zone neighborhoods over there, where even the French police is too scared to enter. Pay attention to the crime, the nightly car fires, the constant specter of terrorism, the burning of churches, the anti-Semitic attacks, and the overtaxed welfare system. And while you're at it, don't forget to look at the rest of Western Europe, which is being crushed under the burden of these devout Muslims. I've traveled to Europe on business and for vacation many times over the past 25 years, and believe me, many places are unrecognizable. There's security forces everywhere to protect from Islamic terrorists. Whole neighborhoods are becoming dirty, dangerous, uncivilized Muslim enclaves. My questions to all Americans, conservative and liberal, Republican and Democrats: is that what you want for your streets, your neighborhoods, your cities, your states? Is that what you want your country to look like? I don't think so. But I do have some solutions, and I have a 10-step plan. And again, I don't believe that all Muslims are evil. And I also don't have a problem with the many Muslims who are peaceful and who wish to integrate and contribute to our country in a positive manner. But unfortunately, those Muslims are far and few in between. And their voices are completely drowned out by the angry mob of the Muslim majority. So here's my 10-step plan. Number 1, Reduce total Muslim immigration to America. There is no need for us to do demographic and cultural shifts over here or exchanges. Look what happens in Michigan and Minnesota. Look what happened. There's some cities and neighborhoods that are starting to look like Mogadishu and Beirut. Trust me, these people don't vote for Americans. They vote for other Muslims. That's how we get radicals, America-hating radicals like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in Congress. Number 2, no admittance of any Muslims to America unless if they are vetted and proven to not be radical and also shown not to hate our way of life. Additionally, don't let any Muslims into this country who do not possess a modern education and good job skills. We have plenty of idiots here in our country already. We don't need to import any more dummies. This rule, by the way, is not just for Muslim immigrants. I think we should apply it to all immigrants who come to our country. Number 3, deport any Muslim immigrant who promotes violence and hatred. This includes the so-called Muslim religious leaders, the imams, and the political leaders like Ilhan Omar, an ingrate and America-hating racist Muslim. And while we're at it, let's shut down all the groups like CARE, who do nothing, in my opinion, but advocate for Muslim radicals and terrorists inside our country and outside our country. Number 4, don't give any government assistance to any Muslim, or for that matter, any non-Muslim immigrant. If they can't make it on their own, they shouldn't be here, period. Number 5, use profiling to protect all Americans. Police, FBI, NSA, CIA, all of our law enforcement agencies should be very involved in monitoring and arresting members of any kind of radical mosque or radical preacher. Enough of these hateful anti-America, anti-Semitic sermons right here in our own backyard. And I'm sick and tired of all their victim games. If they acted like decent, law-abiding people, there would be no reason to surveil them. Number 6, to our insane, suicidal teachers and professors, stop promoting Islam as a religion of peace. Teach our kids the truth about Islam, their history of conquest and aggression, their terrorism, and their aspirations for a worldwide caliphate and submission. No one in his or her right mind believes the childish utopian fantasy of Islam that is promoted by the left-wing professors. Number 7, make a federal law that bans Sharia from ever being enforced anywhere in our country. We have one set of laws for everyone, including Muslims. That is the law of the United States of America. Number 8, do not allow any Muslim immigrants who happen to be radical Islamists who hate our country and our way of life to run for public office. Their oath and allegiance should be to America, not to Islam. And if they have a problem with that, let them run for office in one of their undemocratic Islamic countries. Let's see how far they get over there. Number 9, become completely energy efficient. The less we depend on Muslim oil and gas, the more we produce our own natural resources, including solar, including coal, including oil, including gas, including wind power, the more independent we become, the less we will have to deal with these throwback countries. This would also reduce the influence, the undue influence they have over our lives. And number 10, and it's very important, embrace and be proud of our American way of life. While imperfect, our way of life is superior to all others. You don't want to believe me? You think that Islam is the right way to go? Try to look up how many people from the Muslim world beg to move here. At the same time, try to find out how many Americans are trying to immigrate to those Muslim countries. I have a feeling all of you, including the liberals, know the exact answer to the question I just asked. I really hope you learned something about Islam. I hope you learned something about America in the West. What I really hope is that you learn to recognize the danger of bringing in all these Muslim immigrants, these supposed Muslim refugees into our country. I don't hate anybody, and I don't wish harm to anybody, including to the Muslims. But I do recognize that this is a war for our survival as a nation, as a culture, as a people, and as a democracy, and as a beacon of light to the whole world. America is a beacon of light, and I'd like it to stay that way. So don't take my words and start being rude to Muslim people. Don't take my words and be aggressive or violent. Not all Muslims are bad. Many of them are very decent human beings, and they're just trying to enjoy the American dream, to get a piece of the pie, just like the rest of us. But just be aware, when you bring in a culture that is extremely different from ours, a culture that is basically in opposition to everything that we believe in, there's going to be consequences. And if we want to keep our way of life, we need to stop this blindness about the world that surrounds us. Remember, those who don't know history are destined to repeat it. All right, what a show we had today. I really would look forward to hearing from all of you listeners. I would love if you send me some emails. My email address is ajsteelshow@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is ajsteelshow. I would love to hear from all of you, opinions, opposing viewpoints, and just general ideas for new shows. Thank you so much for being with us. This is AJ Steele, and this is the AJ Steele Show. Please subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget to spread the word. Take care.
All I really